Hi, folks. Welcome back to Murthy Finance Academy. All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to unravel the incredibly tense and complicated conflict between the US and Iran. It's a situation that has the entire world holding its breath, and we're going to break down exactly how we got here, and more importantly, where this whole thing might be headed.
So imagine waking up to headlines like this. They were just boom, everywhere. America and Israel launch a dramatic airstrike on Iran. The supreme leader is dead. You could practically feel the world stop and wait to see what would happen next.
And the response? It was fast and it was furious. Iran didn't just aim its fire back at the US or Israel. Nope, it unleashed attacks across the entire Middle East, hitting major global hubs like Dubai, Bahrain, and Qatar.
And that right there raises the big question, doesn't it? If the fight is between the US and Iran, why are all these other countries getting dragged into the line of fire? Well, to figure that out, we've got to peel back the layers. We'll start with how this alliance went so wrong, then we'll look at the totally different war strategies at play. From there, we'll see how this is affecting all of us globally, look at the money behind the fighting, and finally, what this means for the future of war itself. You know, it is pretty wild to think about it now, but the US and Iran, they used to be best friends. Seriously. For a long time, their relationship was a cornerstone of policy in the Middle East, all built on strategy and, you guessed it, oil. Just look at this timeline. It shows a complete 180. Back in the 50s, the deal was simple. America got the cheap oil it wanted, and Iran got high-tech weapons, and, believe it or not, nuclear technology from the United States. But then, boom, 1979 hits. The revolution topples the American-friendly Shah and puts a fiercely anti-American government in power. And ever since, it's just been one thing after another. A brutal war with Iraq, sanctions, a nuclear deal that fell apart, just decades of hostility. Now, if you want to pinpoint a moment that really lit the fuse for that revolution, you have to look at this party the Shah threw in 1971. While tons of his people were struggling with poverty, he spent the equivalent of $800 million today on a single party. That just became this massive symbol of how out of touch the government was, and it fueled the outrage that eventually brought him down. Okay, so that backstory of mistrust is so important because it completely shapes how both sides are fighting today. To really get what's happening, you have to see it as this giant, high-stakes chess match, but where each player is using a totally different set of rules. On one side of the board, you've got the US and Israel. Their strategy is pretty direct. Take out the leadership, destroy their ability to fight back from the air, and hope the people rise up from the inside. But Iran is playing a completely different game. It's called asymmetric warfare. They actually planned for their leaders to be targeted, so they built this mosaic defense. It's like a Hydra. You cut off one head, and 30 others can still operate all on their own. And at the same time, they're playing economic hardball, hitting their enemies' allies to put the pressure on. And this right here, this is the absolute key to Iran's whole strategy. It's called cost asymmetry. Look, they know they can't go toe-to-toe with the US military budget. They can't build billion-dollar jets to compete. So instead, their goal is to make the fight so unbelievably expensive for their opponents that they just bleed out economically. It's brilliant, in a terrifying kind of way. And this chart, wow, this just lays it all out perfectly. Iran can send out a drone that costs maybe $20,000. To shoot that one drone down, Israel might use an interceptor that costs $100,000. And if the US has to use a Patriot missile, you're talking $4 million. To stop a $20,000 drone? The math is just brutal, and it's an incredibly effective way to drain a super high-tech military's bank account. And this is where it stops being just their problem and starts becoming our problem. Because a fight like this doesn't stay in one place. Its economic shockwaves create a massive price tag for absolutely everyone, whether you're involved or not. I mean, the fallout is huge. We're talking about soaring oil prices, for starters. You have nearly 8 million Indian citizens in the Gulf region who are suddenly at risk. Our global supply chains are getting completely wrecked. This is even a strategic play to try and cut China off from its energy sources, and it's a direct threat to Saudi Arabia's huge Vision 2030 project. So much of this global pain comes down to one little strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has control over this critical shipping lane. And get this, an incredible 20%, 1/5 of the entire world's daily oil supply has to pass right through it. If that gets disrupted, even for a day, we all feel it immediately at the gas pump. So all of this makes you step back and ask, right? Why do these conflicts seem to just drag on, almost like they're designed to? Well, to get that answer, we need to pull back the curtain and see who's actually making money when war becomes a business. It's a simple question, but the answer is incredibly complicated. When you ask who's cashing in on a state of never-ending conflict, it leads you to a really powerful, really influential network. And that network has a name: the military-industrial complex. Think of it like a revolving door, a self-feeding loop. The government uses our tax dollars to fund the military. The military then spends that money buying weapons from private companies. And then those companies use some of their profits to lobby the government for policies that lead to, you guessed it, more military spending. It's a cycle where conflict is literally profitable. And just look at the scale of this business. The US alone is responsible for 42% of all arms exports on the planet. That's more than France, Russia, and China put together. So when a conflict like this one heats up, what happens? Demand for weapons goes through the roof, and the stock prices for these defense companies just soar. For some, perpetual conflict is just good business. And there's another huge economic engine at play here: the petrodollar system. Back in 1974, a deal was made that said oil, the most important commodity in the world, had to be bought and sold in US dollars. This is huge because it means every country needs to have dollars, which props up its value and gives the United States incredible economic power over the whole world. And as history has shown us, leaders who've tried to break away from that system, well, they haven't tended to last very long. So you take these huge economic forces, these decades of bad blood, and you smash them together with brand new technology. What we're seeing in Iran, it's like a preview of how warfare itself is changing right before our eyes. We're not just talking about tanks and soldiers on the ground anymore. Forget that. The modern battlefield is about swarms of cheap autonomous drones. It's about cyber attacks that can shut down a power grid. And critically, it's about information warfare, using social media to spread misinformation and shape how people think, all around the globe. Which brings us to the final, and frankly, the most chilling question of all. We're trapped in this cycle of paranoia, revenge, and betrayal that's been going on for decades. The weapons are getting cheaper, the economic stakes are getting higher, and the tech is getting smarter. So the real question is, can we find a way to break this spiral with diplomacy? Or are we just watching the opening moves of a much, much bigger and more catastrophic global war?
If you like the video, please do like, share, subscribe to Morthy Finance Academy.